It's kind of funny to think about this, but if the reporting is correct, and the initial production run for the Z TriFold is only 20 to 30,000 units, I've had videos that more people have viewed talking about this phone than may actually be able to buy it, at least in that initial launch window. There is a lot of excitement around this device, and what I want to do in this video is I want to talk about whether or not a tri-folding device actually makes any sense, because there's a lot here you kind of have to pull apart if you're going to purchase this device. It has to make sense. We're talking about a device like a regular Galaxy Z Fold, but it adds an additional hinge so that you have a 6.5-inch cover display and then something like a 10-inch inner display, but you're also talking about a device that's going to be prohibitively expensive. Rumors have it somewhere in the $3,000 range. We're ballparking there. We're just going to say in that general territory. So what could this device do to not only justify its existence, but justify someone buying it? Well, obviously, that large inner screen is the entire reason for this thing existing, right? So what would you use that inner screen for? And there's some obvious things. I think that the larger the canvas of that inner screen, the more likely you are to do some split screen multitasking type things. And luckily, Samsung has really, really good multitasking software. And I think it's even going to work better on the TriFold than it does on something like my Z Fold. On a Z Fold device, it's absolutely true that you can have 3 apps running at once, but you end up with one app that's kind of normal and 2 apps over here that are very, very small, tiny little squares. Well, if you have a 10-inch display, those tiny little squares end up being relatively decent sized. I think much more usable. This thing could honestly be an absolute powerhouse when it comes to multitasking with this split window setup. 3 apps running all at the same time, each of which should have a decent amount of space to work. And of course, multimedia would be a big thing on this device as well. I mean, it's not going to have a like 16:9 inner aspect ratio, so you're going to have some black bars above and below your video, but it's still going to be a much larger video than you can generally fit in your pocket. It's going to be bigger than the current crop of folding phones, and of course bigger than any of the Ultra or Pro phones as well. One downside is you're going to have to hold the thing because it's going to be difficult to have some sort of a kickstand. I use things like this that magnetically attach to the back of my phone, and maybe you could put one here and have it kind of be bent outward like that, and maybe that would be enough to hold it up. But because the middle bit is screen, that would be a little bit of a problem when it comes to multimedia stuff that I had not considered until just now. But hey, if you're going to be comfortable with carrying a little kickstand or something in your pocket, maybe you're going to be comfortable bringing with you a very portable mouse, maybe a folding keyboard or something like that, because from what we can tell from leaks from One UI, this thing should be able to run Samsung DeX natively on that inner screen. That means a full desktop experience right there on that device. No external monitor needed, so that could also be an incredibly cool way to use this device. And that's kind of starting to flesh out the general idea here. How do you justify buying a $3,000 device? Well, it has to be more than just one thing. It can't just be your phone. And for the TriFold to make sense, I think it has to be your phone, it has to be your tablet, and maybe, just maybe, it has to be your laptop or computer as well. And we kind of see the vision here for how it could potentially be all of those things. The tablet experience is there. That PC DeX experience is there. Granted, desktop class apps are going to hold that back for some people if you're like me, and what you do on a laptop is mostly just research, web browsing, social media, taking notes. I think it's going to be more than adequate for that type of thing, but for others, it could be not quite good enough. Another thing that I think might actually hold this thing back in a kind of sneaky way is the fact that it has 2 hinges. And some of you are going to say, Shane, this is completely trivial. No one's going to care about this. But strange things happen when you use a device for a long period of time. Small, little pain points build up over time and they change your behavior. When you're talking about a Galaxy Z Fold, something like this. It just has the one hinge. You use the phone. When you want to use the inner screen, you just open it up. And let me just tell you, the fact that some people have found this device to be difficult to open has, I promise you, I've spoken to people, it has caused them to use the inner screen less. Maybe not consciously, but subconsciously, they just don't do it as often as maybe they would be otherwise. We're talking about a device now that has two hinges, the return of the cardboard demo phone here. So that's your cover display. The way that this thing's going to work is you're going to be using the phone, and then when you want to use the inner screen, you open it up, and then you open it up again. And I genuinely think that for some people, that second action, that slight clumsiness perhaps of having to do this and then this, call me crazy, but I think it's actually going to potentially lead to some people using that inner screen less. But then you have to consider this device as a phone, and first and foremost, that's what it has to be the best at, because that's probably how you're going to use it the most. Now, we've seen this device. We've gotten some pretty good looks at it. And as we look at it in phone mode, I think it looks totally fine, right? This is a 6.5-inch display. It looks to be remarkably similar to the Galaxy Z Fold 7. Hole punch selfie camera. The bezels are a little bit thicker than they are on the Fold 7, but I don't think it's thick enough to really be an actual problem for anybody. When it comes to the thickness, it's going to be a little bit thicker, apparently, than like the Z Fold 5, so I also don't think that's a huge problem. It's not going to be quite as nice as using the Fold 7 when it's closed. That's, super, super thin, like a normal phone. It's going to be a little bit thicker than that, but it's really not that bad because the device, when it's opened, is around 4.2 millimeters thick, so when it's closed, it's basically, like I said, like a slightly thicker Z Fold 5, so we're not rolling back that many generations in terms of thickness, and people were fine with that. You can get another look at it here from the top, looking down, seeing how this thing sort of folds in on itself, and you can see how thick it is. I don't think any of this is going to be a real problem. Now, we've also seen rumors about some of the specifications. It's probably going to be using the same 200 megapixel primary camera as the Z Fold 7, and I think that is a very good sensor. As for the others, I would expect things to be really similar to the Fold 7, probably going to have the same 3x telephoto zoom, although there is some reason to think that maybe, just maybe, there is something else going on with the zoom. Maybe this is software. I'm not sure, but 100x zoom has been at least seen in some imagery, so who knows, maybe there could be something else going on here. We've heard it could have a 5,600 milliamp hour battery, which I think is going to mean, in particular, when you're using it in phone mode, a very, very long-lasting device. I think the battery life should be totally fine. When you're using that larger screen, of course, that's going to use a lot more power, so that's going to depend on how much you do of that. But look, guys, I mean, One UI is a very, polished operating system, and One UI 8.5 is looking very, very good. I think as a phone, it should be a little worse than the Z Fold 7 is in terms of being a phone, but that's a pretty high bar to clear. Ultimately, the Galaxy Z TriFold is not targeting the average consumer. This is targeting a very, very small subset of people who would even consider spending this much money on a phone. But if you do get your mind in the right space, right? Could it replace my phone? Yeah, it definitely could replace my phone. Could it replace any and all need for a tablet? Yeah, my Z Fold 7 already does that. Could it replace my laptop? Well, am I willing to either set up a space in my home where a Bluetooth mouse and keyboard can be, a little stand, so I just take my phone, open it up, set it in my stand, and just start using it in DeX mode? Yes, possibly. Am I willing to, if I'm on the go, am I willing to have a bag with me that has a mouse and keyboard already in there, maybe a stand as well? Okay, so maybe that could justify it as well. These are the kind of deeper questions you have to ask to really justify spending that kind of money. Of course, ultimately, only you can make that decision for you. I can't tell you, and I won't tell you how to spend your money, especially when it's that much money. Now, guys, we are still hopeful, based on some model number leaks, that after a South Korean and Chinese launch, maybe in 2026, we will see this device launching more broadly, the United States, Europe, etc., etc. But for right now, all that stuff remains unconfirmed. There is a launch event rumored to be taking place on December 5th. Hopefully, we'll have some information, some better information about a broader launch there. I kind of think that what Samsung is doing, they're waiting to see what the demand is like in their home region, and they're going to decide how many of these things to make for a global release based on that. So it's going to be a little while off still, but that just means you have more time to think about whether or not the Z Fold, TriFold, I should say, makes sense for you. Guys, thanks for watching. Subscribe for more content like this, and until next time, stay nerdy, my friends.